You are watching Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today we have a lot to talk about here on the program surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers as they continue to prepare for their game in Dublin versus the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday. First up, a major change that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers need to make in the run game to fix this group moving forward. Then we'll talk about how defenses are shutting down the Pittsburgh Steelers passing attack and what the Steelers can do to get the passing game going. Then we'll talk about the latest injury updates surrounding Deshaun Elliott and Joey Porter Jr., and then what to expect from Pittsburgh's defense going up against Kevin O'Connell's Vikings offense and Carson Wentz on Sunday. So beat the Vikings for me down there by clicking that subscribe button. We're doing a subscriber battle with our Chat Sports Vikings channel called Vikings Now. Right now, they have 93 new subscribers on their channel this week. We only have 87. If I know Steelers Nation, you guys do not want to lose this sub battle. So new viewers, we're counting on you guys to click that subscribe button. Vikings host Patrick Seatman, he's a good friend of mine, but he bet me $50 that he would beat us in this sub battle after he saw that he was winning here on a Thursday. So do me a favor here, guys. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already so we can beat the Vikings off the field before hopefully the Steelers can beat the Vikings on the field in Dublin on Sunday morning. All right, so now let's get into our first topic of discussion here, which is a much-needed pivot in the run game, at least in my opinion, which is that Arthur Smith should pivot away from his patented zone rushing scheme, and they should pivot to more of a power run scheme and run more gap scheme concepts because plain and simply, guys, this offensive line has not been playing to a standard that a zone rushing offense needs. Because in a zone rushing system, the thing that you guys need to know is that the offensive line needs to work together and everyone needs to do their job. Everyone, you can't have missed assignments, all these different things. And there's all these rules in terms of who needs to block who and when. And you got to climb to the linebackers. And there's all these different things that make it a more complicated run scheme for the offensive line to execute. And as we've seen with Pat Meyer as the offensive line coach here in Pittsburgh, he has done a terrible job throughout his tenure here in Pittsburgh at teaching these guys how to do things the right way. And what we're seeing on the Steelers run game film right now is missed assignments and all these different things. And this offensive line is just not executing the zone rushing schemes that Arthur Smith is dialing up right now. And I think, especially if things continue to really not work out over the next several weeks, you got to make a pivot to a more gap scheme type of run game here, which is a lot simpler for the offensive line because with a zone running scheme, it depends on the front and all these different things, and you have to climb and you got to have a high level of chemistry and cohesion and football intelligence, and when you don't have an offensive line coach that's coaching guys up in the right way, you're not really going to have success. But with a gap scheme run game, you can have a little bit more of a simplicity. You just have to get in front of your guy and push him backwards, or you pull and you take the guy that's coming through. Like, you know, a gap scheme run game is a lot simpler and much more easy to execute and just allows the Steelers offensive linemen to go out and execute assignments. For Broderick Jones in particular, you can tell that he's thinking too much out there in run blocking. You know, he's not, you know, he's having some really bad mistakes in terms of who he's blocking. He's not blocking the right person consistently. And I think a lot of that is, you know, he came into the league a bit raw with this stuff and he hasn't been coached up in the correct way. But simplifying things and just saying, all right, Broderick, if they line up this way, you take this guy and you try to absolutely pancake him. I think that makes it a lot easier for Broderick Jones as opposed to all these rules with the zone and the inside zone and outside zone, all these different things that just aren't helping his development at this point. Isaac Seumalo, we know he can run this type of scheme because this is exactly what he ran in Philadelphia. Philadelphia has ran a power run scheme for many, many years at this point. And Seumalo can certainly play that type of system. Then Zach Frazier is a much better downhill blocker, in my opinion. Even going back to college, in my profile of Zach Frazier, I thought that he wasn't a great fit for a zone rushing scheme because he's not exactly the best mover in the world. He's a great athlete, and he's fantastic at winning positioning and all these different things. He's a former wrestler, all that different stuff. But in terms of just moving off the spot, you know, that's not his greatest strength. He's more of a downhill blocker where you ask him to drive someone backwards. He's much better at that. than he is with the zone stuff. So I think that, he would be better suited in a gap scheme as well. Same thing with Mason McCormick, who is a big human being with a lot of functional play strength. He's another guy here that I think is struggling with some of the assignments that he's getting in these zone concepts that the Steelers are running right now that I think would benefit from a little bit more simplicity. And then also Troy Fautanu ran a power-based run scheme there at Washington. That's what Kalen DeBoer runs. And now at Alabama, that's what he ran at Washington all those years back, and he was phenomenal at it. So I think that you can really get the most out of this offensive line if you simplify some things here and you go to a gap run scheme. And then also, it also just happens to be the case, guys, that your starting running back, Jaylen Warren, is awesome running behind gap schemes. You take a look at Warren's career splits here with the different types of run concepts: zone, gap, duo, and pitch plays. The one that has the most in terms of yards per carry is the gap stuff that he has ran throughout his career. He's a super explosive gap runner where, if you can create some open lanes for him up the middle, he can absolutely use his explosiveness, his jump cutting ability to make guys miss at the second level. Jaylen Warren throughout his career has been, better as a gap scheme runner than some of the zone stuff. You guys can see here 4.2 yards per carry compared to 4.9 with the pitch plays and 5.1 with the gap plays. And, you would think that Arthur Smith would look at these career numbers and say, okay, my top running back is best when running behind a gap run scheme when playing in the National Football League. We should run more of gap, right? No, right now you're playing over 60% zone runs. 27 of Jaylen Warren's carries to this point have been zone carries. There's only been one gap run this entire season. So not only are you just not prioritizing it, you're pretty much not doing it at all. And I think that that is exactly the type of scheme that this offense needs to be running. And I think that Arthur Smith needs to stop making fetch happen here, guys. He needs to stop trying to just do what he does, and he needs to pivot to what this offense and the personnel runs best. And that's what good coaches do, guys. Good coaches don't just have, quote-unquote, their system that they run no matter what the results are. Good coaches tailor their offensive and defensive schemes to be able to accentuate the strengths of their players. And right now, I think it's abundantly clear, based on the numbers, based on the film evidence, that this offensive line and this running back are both better in a gap scheme. So I think you have to make that switch. And, it's not like, teams can't be successful gap scheme type of offenses, right? The Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay made this same exact switch a couple years ago where now they're majority a power-based run scheme. The Detroit Lions run a ton of power. You got the Philadelphia Eagles that pretty much only run power in their run game right now. So, this is certainly a system here where the Steelers can have a lot of success if they're willing to adjust and make some changes. I guess we'll see if Arthur Smith can wise up in the weeks to come. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers switch to a gap-based run scheme? Right now, as you guys saw just then on the numbers, we're right now about a 60% zone running scheme, and then another 20% is duo. So that's a lot of zone right there, guys. Give me a yes or a no whether you think this team should pivot after just 3 weeks. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Omaha Steaks. And while I'm telling you about our sponsor today, simply give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Omaha Steaks. And from handcrafted steaks to delicious fall favorites, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience. Enjoy USDA-certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, cozy and convenient comfort meals, plus tailgating favorites like chicken wings, smash burgers, and big deli-style franks. And now, during their Red Hot Sale event, you guys can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off your order when you use promo code STEELERS at checkout. So just an example of what you're going to see on the website when you pick one of their assortments. This is the classic favorites assortments. So there's a bunch of different ones that you can choose from. This one was originally $265.99. All right, so with the half off, it's $129.99. And then with our code STEELERS, if you use that promo code, this assortment that was originally $265, you guys can get this right now for less than $100. And let me tell you guys, Omaha Steaks is my choice of butcher here because Cassie and I have steak 2 to 3 times a week, and we want to get affordable prices, and Omaha Steaks provides that for us every single week. So if you want to get fired up for fall grilling with Omaha Steaks today, you can visit visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Red Hot Sale event. And again, an extra $35 off when you use promo code Steelers at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and get an additional $35 off with promo code Steelers at checkout. That means you're getting over 50% off any of their assortments today when you guys use code Steelers. So see the site for details. A big thank you to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now moving on to the passing game for the Pittsburgh Steelers and what's going wrong on that side of the ball. Right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are seeing a lot of cover 5, all right? And if you guys aren't familiar with cover 5, if you play Madden, it's commonly referred to as cover 2 man, where you've got the 2 deep safeties playing deep zones, and then you've got man coverage, usually press coverage across the board. Usually played out of nickel, but sometimes it's played out of base as well. But the benefits of a defense playing cover 5 and why it's a good coverage when you can play it is because you can keep a lid on deep passing opportunities because you got those 2 deep safeties playing half zones. And then also it opens up the cornerbacks to play really aggressive press coverage, to jam receivers at the line of scrimmage and try to take them out of the play entirely. All right, so this is a very aggressive coverage, usually played in situations where the opposing team is going to be passing the football, and there's certain ways that you can beat cover 5 because teams are just going to sit in this coverage all day if you can't beat it, and you can't do any of these 3 things. Number 1, you can run the football, all right? Because the 2 high safeties are playing deep, that means there's 1 less person in the box, which gives an advantage to the run game. So you can run the football more effectively when teams play cover 5 against you. Also, a second way that you can beat cover 5 is that your receivers win one-on-one. If you've got separators at the wide receiver position or at the tight end position that can separate in man-to-man coverage and against press coverage in particular. And then the third thing that you can do to beat cover 5 is have a quarterback that can run the football because there's nobody spying the quarterback and there's only 4 people rushing the passer. So if you can escape that 4-man pressure, everyone's got eyes on their receiver because they're in man coverage, and it gives a wide open space to the rushing quarterback to be able to pick up big gains. But the thing is, guys, Pittsburgh hasn't been able to do any of these, all right? You got Aaron Rodgers. He's not running the football. Right now you've got a bunch of tight ends on the field, so they're not winning their one-on-one matchups, and DK Metcalf's getting jammed at the line of scrimmage, and then you can't run the football even with 2 high safeties because of some of the issues that we've been talking about in the zone run game, not doing your assignments, doing those things. Those simple things are costing the Steelers' passing game opportunities to throw the ball down the field. And if you're offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, you have to be able to see that all 3 of the defenses that you have gone up against have played a ton of man coverage and specifically cover 5 against your offense because they're not scared of the run game. They're not scared of Aaron Rodgers taking off, and they're not scared of any of the Steelers' wide receiver threats getting open versus the press man coverage that this team has been seeing. So you have to be able to manufacture space because right now these guys, and especially DK Metcalf, is just getting jammed consistently at the line of scrimmage, and the Steelers need to find ways to get him ahead of steam. So the first way you can do that is pre-snap motion. Get him in motion before the snap so that the opposing corner can't jam him at the line of scrimmage. Right now the Steelers are really staying static, which really opens that window up for opposing corners to shut down DK Metcalf before he can get going. Another way that you can do it is bunch formations. The Steelers have used bunch formations, but a lot of times teams have bunch checks where they have certain rules for who takes which receiver out of the bunch. So maybe that's not the best way, but then stack formations is another way you can do that. Again, teams have stack rules, but at least it would prevent teams from jamming DK Metcalf at the line of scrimmage. And then the fourth way is to use some rub routes, all right, and use space and use some of these receivers and some of the routes that they're running to open up creative space for people out in space for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. That's the way you beat man coverage, and that's how you manufacture space to kind of beat these press looks that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been seeing. And honestly, guys, the Minnesota Vikings, who the Steelers play this weekend, don't really run a lot of true man coverage. They play a lot of quarters, a lot of palms, a lot of cover 2, and they play a lot of cover 0, which is probably the most man that they play. But I think we see a good dose of cover 5 versus the Steelers because plain simply, like we've seen teams go against their own trends, like even Mike McDonald played a lot of cover 5, and he almost never plays true man coverage, and they did it against the Pittsburgh Steelers quite a bit, and they were quite successful at it. So, this might be one of the more simplistic Brian Flores game plans that we see from the Vikings defense all season long, and unless the Steelers have a plan to attack these cover 5 man looks, it's gonna be another long day at the office for the Steelers passing attack. We're actually gonna be going live for that game, guys. We're gonna be waking up bright and early with you guys. 8:30 a.m. Eastern time is when we're gonna be going live for Steelers versus Vikings in Dublin. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button and join us on Sunday morning for our live watch party here in Week 4. So now shifting over to the defensive side of the ball, and some great news here, guys, this week is that Deshaun Elliott and Joey Porter Jr. have returned to practice, and it certainly seems like they are on their way to getting back onto the field. But Pat McAfee Show Steelers insider Mark Kaboly certainly seems to have his doubts that these guys will be playing on Sunday. He says, "I think it's still up in the air for Joey to play. Probably both, Porter and Elliott, to be honest with you, until after the bye week. Elliott looks fine. There's no limp, no brace, no crutch. There's nothing like that. But hamstrings are tricky when it comes to a cornerback like Joey." So, I think that the defensive game plan may change pretty drastically depending on who plays. If Joey can play this weekend, I think that will be big for this defense because they can play more press man looks. They've been playing a lot of off man looks to start this season because they don't have anyone that's particularly good on the outside at playing press coverage outside of Jalen Ramsey, and they want to move him inside, and they want to play him at safety, and they don't want to put him outside all the time. So getting to get Joey Porter Jr. back would be huge and would open up the quote-unquote menu of defensive coverages you can run. And then, of course, we know what Deshaun Elliott brings to this defense as well. But I think we're going to see less cover 1 than what we've been seeing from the Steelers over the last several weeks. Right now, the Steelers are actually second in blitz rate, but it's mostly because they're running something like this where you got a 5 down front and you're blitzing everybody or you're sending everyone towards the quarterback. So it's not really like a true creative blitz or a simulated blitz or anything like that. It's a pretty simple blitz, and the Steelers have been spamming this coverage for the past especially 2 weeks against Seattle and New England, who don't have the best wide receiver cores in the league. But now you're going up against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison this weekend. If you're going to be playing a lot of cover 1, I think you're going to get burned against those two really good wide receivers. Justin Jefferson might be the best receiver in the game today, and I think if you don't have safety help on him over the top, it's going to be a long day at the office for whoever is tasked with taking him on in man coverage. So I think we're going to see a lot more zone from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think they're going to play a very similar brand of bend, don't break style of defense like we saw last week, where they kind of forced Drake May in that Patriots offense to go on methodical drives, not give up too many explosive plays, and keep the defense on the field for as many plays as possible to increase the likelihood of a turnover. All right, and we saw that result in 5 turnovers for this defense last week. It certainly worked. But how sustainable is that? I guess we'll have to see. But I actually think that's a pretty good game plan against a quarterback like Carson Wentz, somebody that likes to throw the ball down the field, somebody that is prone to making bad decisions with the football, somebody that's prone to making inaccurate throws, which could turn into turnover opportunities, somebody with very bad pocket presence. I think the strategy for the Steelers is to kind of keep the lid on the defense and then kind of wait for Carson Wentz to make a mistake. And certainly we saw the Patriots do that last week, coughing up the football 4 times, throwing an interception, and that bend, don't break style approach certainly worked for the Steelers versus the Pats, and I think it's probably the best strategy for the Steelers this week against the Vikings, because if you want to man up Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and these guys that can create massive amounts of separation, you're probably going to lose. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But if you can play a style where you keep everything in front of you, you play very solid, you tackle, you don't give up too many big gains, and you keep that offense on the field for as many plays as possible, that's going to raise the probability of a turnover on that drive. So hopefully Carson Wentz can make some mistakes. Hopefully the Steelers can take advantage of some of those mistakes. And then when Pittsburgh does go to man coverage, you got to have Jalen Ramsey on 18. I mean, plain and simply, Darius Slay and Brandon Echols, I think they're good players for who they are, but they're not going to have a prayer to guard Justin Jefferson one-on-one. Jalen Ramsey may actually have the best shot there, so when you do go to man, make sure Jalen Ramsey is on Jay Jettas. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will the Pittsburgh Steelers hold Minnesota to under 20 points in this game? Let me know down there in the comments. Yes or no? They held the Patriots to under 20 last week. It's the first time they've done that to an opponent in a while. But let me know what you guys think. Yes or no, will Pittsburgh hold Minnesota to under 20 points? That'll be it for today's edition of Steelers News and Rumors. Tomorrow we get the final injury report for Steelers versus Vikings. We get official game designations for both sides, so we'll make sure to get you guys an update on that. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.